Hanukkah. Now it's significant, even though it's a non-biblical holiday, it's significant for a couple of reasons for believers in Jesus. First of all, it was at Hanukkah that Jesus made a public profession of his deity. He proclaimed himself to be God. In John 10, verses 22 and 23, we read, "Now it was the feast of dedication, Hanukkah, in Jerusalem, and it was winter, and Jesus walked in the temple in Solomon's porch." So here he was in the temple, very public place, in the winter time, which is when Hanukkah is observed, and it was at the feast of dedication, the feast of Hanukkah, that Jesus made this very important statement. He said in John chapter 10, verse 30, "I and my Father are one." Now, the Bible tells us that when the religious leaders heard that, they were upset. And in fact, they picked up stones to stone Jesus. Why? It's because they knew the history of Hanukkah. And Jesus asked the question, "For which of my good works are you stoning me?" And this was their response. They said, "For a good work we do not stone you, but for blasphemy, and because you, being a man, make yourself God." See, they remembered the history of Hanukkah, where 200 years before, another man by the name of Antiochus had called himself Antiochus Epiphanes, God manifest. And here, from their perspective, was another man doing the same thing. And they picked up stones to stone him. The difference is this. Antiochus the fourth claimed to be God. So did Jesus. But Antiochus is dead. Jesus Christ, the promised Messiah, is very much alive. So who was telling the truth? It was Jesus, of course. That's one very important thing about Hanukkah, why it's so significant to us as believers in Yeshua, in Jesus. The second thing is that really, if you don't have Hanukkah, you don't have Christmas. Now we know that God throughout history has always kept for himself a remnant of believers. But from a human perspective, if you think about it, if all of the Jewish people during the time of Antiochus had assimilated, if they had worshiped the Greek gods, they had destroyed all the Torah scrolls, they did not follow God's laws, then theoretically, there would have been no Jewish Messiah. And therefore, no Savior, no Christmas. Hanukkah and all it represents is an important holiday, especially because the true God and the true Messiah was made manifest 200 years later. First in a manger, then on a cross, and then finally by an empty tomb.